Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one.
Ed Gein is escorted by police out of his rural residence following his arrest. Initially investigated for the disappearance of Bernice Worden, a local store owner, the case took on an even more sinister dimension when investigations revealed that Gein had exhumed bodies from local cemeteries and used parts of the corpses to create macabre artifacts. This disturbing event inspired future works in popular culture and horror film characters. In this photo, we see an example of the type of macabre artifact produced by Ed Gein. Gloves made from human skin, crafted from the remains of his victims. In 1984, Ed Gein was hospitalized at the Mendota Mental Health Institute. After his diagnosis of schizophrenia, Gein was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in psychiatric institutions, where he received treatment for his mental condition. During his hospitalization, he was considered a calm and cooperative patient, without displaying violent or disruptive behavior. The image shows Unit 731 of the Imperial Japanese Army conducting human experiments with bacteria on a prisoner. Between 1931 and 1945, Unit 731 operated in China, carrying out cruel experiments under the guise of medical research. In a remote location, Japanese doctors and scientists exposed victims, many of whom were Chinese civilians or prisoners of war, to infectious diseases, chemical weapons, and other brutal procedures without consent. These acts aim to enhance biological warfare techniques and understand the effects of bacteria and viruses on living human bodies. The image shows a German shepherd with an additional head of a smaller dog implanted, resulting from a controversial experiment conducted by Vladimir Demikhov in the mid-20th century. Known for his radical transplant experiments, Demikhov carried out this project in a laboratory in Moscow. His goal was to explore the possibilities of organ regeneration and transplantation, an emerging field at the time. His research helped pave the way for future heart and lung transplant surgeries despite the serious ethical and moral issues associated with his experiments. On December 10, 1945, when police entered Frances Brown's apartment, they found the 32-year-old woman dead with a knife stabbed in her back and a threatening message written on the wall in her lipstick. "For God's sake, catch me before I kill more. I can't control myself." Brown was one of the victims of the infamous Lipstick Killer, a serial killer who terrorized Chicago in the 1940s. The message left at the crime scene distinguished Brown's case and attracted significant public and police attention. The killer, identified as William Hirons, was captured in 1946, confessed to the murders, and was sentenced to life imprisonment. In this photo, we see John Wayne Gacy dressed as Pogo the Clown. Investigations and the subsequent trial revealed the horrifying extent of his crimes, making him one of the most infamous serial killers in U.S. history. Gacy was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection in 1994. The photo shows the burial of John Wayne Gacy's victims. Gacy killed at least 33 young men and boys whose bodies were found buried in his home. He lured his victims with promises of work or entertainment, exploiting his image as a respectable citizen and popular clown. In 1901, French police found Blanche Monier, a prisoner who weighed only 55 pounds, depicted here shortly after her discovery. She was found in the city of Poitiers, where she had been kept in solitary confinement for 25 years. The confinement was imposed by her own family, who claimed she had fallen in love with a man not accepted by her relatives. Blanche's release only occurred after an anonymous letter was sent to local authorities, alerting them to her situation. In 1931, psychologists Winthrop and Luella Kellogg conducted a bold experiment raising Gua, a female chimpanzee, alongside their child Donald in their Indiana home. The goal was to explore how much a chimpanzee could acquire human behaviors and skills if raised in a human environment from an early age. The photo shows Gua next to baby Donald. After about 9 months, the Kellogg's ended the experiment when Donald began to mimic Gua's behaviors, including grunts and other typical chimpanzee behaviors. The sheriff of Leon County presents the indictment against Ted Bundy for the attacks on the Chi Omega sorority, while Bundy laughs upon hearing the document. Later, Bundy confessed to murdering 30 women in 7 states between 1974 and 1978. However, the actual number of victims may be higher, as there are suspicions that he committed other murders that were never proven or confessed. Bundy was convicted of several of these murders and was executed in the electric chair on January 24, 1989. In 1978, during the investigation of Ted Bundy's crimes, a collection of objects was found and laid out on a table, revealing some of the serial killer's methods. Among these items were ropes, gloves, and various tools, such as pliers, crowbars, and knives. Bundy used the ropes to bind and control his victims, while the gloves helped avoid leaving fingerprints. These items provided physical evidence that helped establish connections between different crime scenes and corroborate testimonies linking Bundy to multiple murders. Genie Wiley, known as the Wild Child, is seen in this photo with a pensive expression, looking down. Genie spent almost her entire childhood confined to a small room and socially isolated by her abusive father. At 13, when she was found, Genie was unable to speak or walk properly due to the severe abuse and neglect she had suffered. Her father, Clark Wiley, committed suicide on November 20, 1970. Shortly after Genie was discovered by authorities and placed under protective custody, Clark left only a brief note that said, "The world will never understand." The shadow of a man etched into the pavement of Hiroshima after the atomic bomb explosion is one of the most iconic images of the devastation caused by the blast. At the moment of detonation, the intense light of the bomb vaporized instantly everything in its direct path, leaving the impression of shadows only in areas shielded by bodies and objects. The image of the South Forks Bridge inauguration in Gold Bridge, British Columbia in 1941 features a figure that stands out oddly. Dressed in modern clothing, such as a logo t-shirt, hoodie, and sunglasses, the individual contrasts sharply with the formal attire of the period. Dubbed time traveler on social media, this intriguing mystery raises questions about their presence and attire, which appear out of place for the era. The photograph, taken in Wyoming in 1930, shows a small mummified figure discovered by gold miners after an explosion on a cliff in San Pedro. The figure, sitting cross-legged and measuring only 10 inches in height, was found inside a sealed chamber that was unexpectedly exposed. Known as the San Pedro mummy, the small mummy sparked debates among archaeologists, anthropologists, and mystery enthusiasts. Some speculated it could be an example of a prehistoric dwarf or a mummified baby, while others linked it to ancient legends about small beings. Michael Rockefeller, young and smiling, moments before his tragic fate in New Guinea in 1961. Heir to the Rockefeller family, Michael embarked on an expedition to collect artifacts from indigenous tribes in New Guinea, a little explored territory rich in unknown cultures. Fascinated by the art and rituals of the Asmat tribes, known for their unique sculptures, Michael disappeared after an issue with his boat. Subsequent reports suggested he may have fallen victim to the cannibalistic practices of the tribe he was trying to contact. Detectives and a coroner examining evidence from 2 victims of the Cleveland torso killer in August 1938. At that time, the city was rocked by a series of brutal crimes, investigations of which largely remain unsolved to this day. The victims, often from vulnerable communities, were found in conditions that shocked and terrorized to this day. The case received its name due to the way the bodies were left, often mutilated and reduced to only torsos. The Siberian bear hunting suit shown in the photo is a robust piece of padded leather adorned with hundreds of iron spikes. In the 19th century, facing bears was seen as an act of great valor and courage, essential for survival and social status. More than just clothing, the suit was a survival tool designed to protect the hunter from fatal attacks. This particular example is notable for being the only known suit that actually protected its wearer in a confrontation with a bear. In 1928, Lon Chaney starred in the silent film Laugh, Clown, Laugh, in which he portrayed a clown who, despite making everyone laugh, harbors a deep personal sadness. At the time, silent cinema was at its peak, and Chaney was renowned for his exceptional ability to physically and emotionally transform himself for each character he played. During the Vietnam War, an American soldier holds a jungle centipede, one of the many threatening creatures that inhabited the dense and impenetrable Vietnamese jungles. With its segmented body and hundreds of legs, the centipede exemplifies the dangers lurking in the shadows of the jungle. Cell used during the Salem witch trials. In 1692, Salem, Massachusetts was consumed by fear and superstition, leading to the imprisonment and trial of many people accused of witchcraft. Cells, like the one in the photo, were used to detain the accused during the trials, many of whom were women. These spaces were notoriously uncomfortable and unsanitary, exacerbating the physical suffering of prisoners already subjected to dreadful accusations. A children's gas mask with a Mickey Mouse-inspired design created in the United States in 1942 during World War II. At that time, American families were encouraged to have gas masks available for all members as a precaution against potential chemical attacks from enemies. The initiative aimed to make the use of gas masks less intimidating for children by incorporating the playful design of the famous cartoon character. An ancient device, recovered from a shipwreck near the island of Antikythera in Greece in 1901, is known as the Antikythera mechanism. This archaeological find proved fascinating due to its complexity and sophistication. The artifact consists of a set of bronze gears used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses with extraordinary accuracy for its time. It is believed that the mechanism dates back to the 2nd century BCE, making it one of the earliest known examples of analog computing. Discovered by a curator from the National Media Museum in an antique bookstore, the images captured by the alleged medium William Hope are known as spiritual photographs. Dating from the early 1900s, these images purportedly show spectral and misty figures alongside people, often identified by clients as deceased relatives or friends. William Hope, an English photographer, gained notoriety during the spiritualist movement, claiming to capture the presence of spirits in his photographs. Wilfred Voynich acquired this enigmatic manuscript in 1912. Known as the Voynich manuscript, it is a 15th century work resembling a codex filled with mysterious illustrations and text in an unknown language. The manuscript contains about 240 pages with text, botanical diagrams, astrological figures, and other illustrations that defy interpretation. Written in an unidentified script, the Voynich manuscript has been the subject of intense study and debate among linguists, cryptographers, historians, and mystery enthusiasts. To this day, no one has managed to decipher its content or determine its original purpose. On August 3, 1952, a photograph taken by Shell Alpert, a young U.S. Coast Guard officer in Salem, Massachusetts, captured 4 unidentified flying objects in formation. The image, which remains unaltered and unexplained, shows the objects on a night that seemed ordinary until the sky was illuminated by these mysterious shapes. The unresolved incident continues to stimulate public interest and scientific research into unidentified flying objects. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, displayed a sarcastic and malevolent look during his trial, reflecting his disdain for the victims and the judicial process. Ramirez, one of the most notorious serial killers in the United States, terrorized California in the 1980s with a series of violent crimes, including murder, sexual assault, and robbery. Frequently smiling sinisterly at those present in the courtroom, his behavior reaffirmed his image as an extremely dangerous and disturbing individual. Remnants of a kindergarten classroom after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. The image captures the abrupt disruption of daily life caused by the nuclear explosion that occurred in late April 1986 in the city of Pripyat, near the nuclear plant. The explosion released large amounts of radioactive material, rendering the surrounding area uninhabitable for many centuries. The city of Pripyat, designed to house plant workers and their families, was quickly evacuated and remains a ghost town to this day. A scientist descends into the radioactive darkness of Chernobyl in 1986. The photograph, taken during the containment and assessment efforts following the disaster, illustrates the arduous work of professionals who risked their lives in a highly contaminated environment. Experts from around the world were called upon to deal with the aftermath of the accident, which became the worst civilian nuclear disaster in history. The image shows Omayra Sanchez, a young girl trapped among the debris after the eruption of the Nevado del Ruiz volcano in November 1985 in Colombia. The eruption caused a massive flow of mud known as a lahar, which devastated the city of Armero and buried thousands of people. Omayra, 13 years old at the time, was trapped in the ruins of her home for about 60 hours, bravely fighting for her life while rescue teams desperately tried to save her. Unfortunately, despite heroic efforts, Omayra succumbed to her injuries and exhaustion. On August 30th, 2015, Jolie Callan was tragically murdered by her ex-boyfriend, Daniel Bunner, while enjoying the view on the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama. Daniel invited Jolie for a hike at a spot they used to frequent together. During the walk, he shot Jolie in the head and threw her body off the 40-foot cliff shown in the photo. After the crime, Daniel called 911, admitting the shooting and claiming the incident was a failed suicide pact. He was arrested and charged with murder. The 15th century painting Madonna with St. Giovannino, created by Domenico Gandio, is notable not only for its religious value, but also for a curious disc-shaped object in the sky and a figure on the beach with a dog observing it. These unusual elements challenge conventional interpretation and provoke debates about possible anachronistic representations. The detail of the flying object and the presence of the witness on the beach could be seen as an early anticipation of themes associated with UFOs. The enigmatic Nazca lines, created by ancient peoples of Peru, are visible in the Nazca Desert and represent one of the greatest mysteries of South American archaeology. These lines, which include geometric shapes and figures of animals and plants, were mostly made between 500 BCE and 500 CE. They are believed to have served various purposes, from religious and ritual practices to astronomical observations or simply as artistic expressions. The precision and scale of these works defy explanations, encouraging ongoing studies, and can only be fully appreciated from the air, which adds to their mystery. Two children tied to a heater in a Lebanese psychiatric asylum in 1982. The image reveals the harsh reality faced by vulnerable patients in institutions often lacking resources and proper care. The poor conditions and lack of trained staff resulted in inhumane treatments, with extreme containment methods applied to both children and adults. George Metesky, known as the Mad Bomber, is seen looking through the bars of his cell at the Waterbury, Connecticut police station. After a series of bombings that began in the 1940s and continued until 1956, Metesky was finally arrested in January 1957. His acts were motivated by revenge against companies he believed had wronged him personally and professionally by denying him compensation for a work accident that occurred years earlier. Mannequins set up in the Nevada desert for nuclear tests. In the 1950s, the U.S. government conducted several tests as part of Operation Teapot, aiming to assess the effectiveness and effects of nuclear weapons. The site, remote from populated areas and shrouded in secrecy, became a testing ground to measure damage and evaluate defense capabilities against nuclear attacks. A mask worn by Dennis Rader, known as BTK, during his attacks. Rader terrorized Wichita, Kansas, and surrounding areas from 1974 to 1991, beginning with the murder of the Otero family and culminating with the crime against Dolores Davis. He used the mask not only to conceal his identity, but also to heighten the terror of his victims. Guillaume Duchenne conducting an electrophysiological experiment on a patient. Between 1854 and 1856, the French neurologist dedicated himself to studying human facial expressions through the electrical stimulation of facial muscles. These studies were fundamental in understanding emotions and the impact of electrical impulses on facial muscles. Duchenne used his technique, later known as the Duchenne smile, to demonstrate that it was possible to distinguish genuine expressions from forced ones by the activation of specific muscles. Colin Evans, a medium, is photographed during a séance, apparently floating in the air before bewildered spectators. The seance took place in an unidentified venue in the mid-1930s when spiritualism and occultism were at their peak. Evans gained notoriety for claiming that he could levitate, a phenomenon that the photograph sought to capture. During a preliminary hearing in 1973, Edmund Kemper is photographed laughing while the detective struggles to unlock his handcuffs. Kemper, known for his brutal crimes against college students, confessed to murdering 10 people, including his mother and grandparents. He was found guilty of 8 counts of first-degree murder. Although he surprised many by pleading guilty and requesting the death penalty, California had temporarily suspended capital punishment, resulting in a life sentence without parole. A giant golden-crowned flying fox is hanging from the ceiling of a house. In the heart of the tropical forests of the Philippine archipelago, this species of bat, the largest in the world in terms of wingspan, can reach up to 5.6 feet. The giant golden-crowned flying fox is frugivorous, feeding primarily on fruit such as figs, and plays a crucial role in seed dispersal and maintaining the health of tropical forests. Despite its imposing size and potentially intimidating appearance, these bats are harmless to humans. The medium Eva C, producing a luminous apparition between her hands, dated May 17, 1912. The photo was taken during a private seance in Paris, a place often associated with spiritual gatherings and mystical experimentation at the time. In this context, Eva C was a well-known figure, attracting the attention of both skeptics and believers with her public demonstrations of supposedly supernatural phenomena. A photo of tents partially buried in snow during the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia in the winter of 1959. The Dyatlov Pass, named after the group's leader Igor Dyatlov, has become synonymous with mystery. That winter, the young students set out to tackle a highly challenging route in extremely adverse conditions. Subsequent investigations revealed that the night of their deaths was chaotic, with everyone abandoning their tents hastily, barefoot, and wearing inadequate clothing for the extreme cold. The exact reasons for this panic remain unknown, fueling theories ranging from avalanches to secret military experiments. In 1963, Reverend K.F. Lord took a photograph at Christ Church in Newby, England, capturing a ghostly figure with distorted and elongated features, appearing to be draped in a cloak before the altar. The image sparked intense debate among paranormal phenomena experts and skeptics. Some believe it could be a case of double exposure or manipulation of light and shadow, while others argue it is a legitimate record of paranormal activity. In 1964, Jim Templeton, a firefighter and amateur photographer, took a photo of his daughter during a picnic in the Solway Firth marshes, Cumbria, England. Upon developing the photos, Templeton was surprised to find a figure that appeared to be an astronaut behind his daughter. He claimed that he had not seen anyone other than his family during the outing. The photograph, known as the Solway Firth astronaut, attracted global attention and generated various theories, including extraterrestrial interference and film defects. In 1964, Frenchman Robert Lark photographed a supposed sea creature during a vacation at the Great Barrier Reef. The image shows a sea monster estimated to be about 66 feet long. Lark and his family were on a boat exploring marine life when they noticed unusual movement in the water. Quickly, Lark captured a photo of the creature before it vanished into the depths. Experts suggested that the creature could be an unknown species of fish or marine mammal, while others speculated that it might be an optical illusion or an inanimate object misinterpreted. The photo captures the moment when Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda, changes to a disdainful expression upon discovering that the photographer is Jewish. The incident occurred during a League of Nations meeting in Geneva in September 1933, before the intensification of anti-Semitic policies in Europe. Goebbels, known for his role in promoting Nazi ideology, was a key figure in Adolf Hitler's regime. The image not only shows Goebbels' dramatic change in demeanor, but also reflects the growing intensity of prejudice and persecution against Jews. During World War I, Russian soldiers created a macabre and comedic atmosphere by participating in an impromptu performance to relieve the stress of combat. Dressed in peculiar and frightening costumes, they created a blend of horror and humor. This moment of respite in the conflict helped maintain troop morale through humor and entertainment. However, the eerie costumes added a dark tone to the performance. A basketball card of Mark Jackson is notorious not for its sports rarity, but for the eerie coincidence of capturing brothers Lyle and Eric Menendez in the background stands. They are seen attending a game at Madison Square Garden shortly after committing the crime that would make them infamous, the murder of their parents in Beverly Hills in 1989. The photo captures one of the most intense moments of the Green River Killer investigation: the excavations in Gary Ridgway's backyard following his arrest in November 2001. Ridgway, who confessed to committing 48 murders, is suspected of having carried out even more crimes, possibly making him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Ridgway's home was turned into one of the country's most meticulously examined crime scenes. Forensic teams conducted detailed excavations in the backyard and other areas of the property, searching for additional evidence to clarify the total number of victims and the extent of his crimes. In January 1914, the eruption of Mount Sakurajima, one of Japan's most active volcanoes, unleashed a devastating force that permanently altered the region's geography. Located on the Osumi Peninsula, the volcano erupted for the last time while still connected to the mainland. The lava from the event ultimately connected the island to the mainland. The devastation forced the relocation of thousands of people and caused extensive damage to local communities. The photograph by Aaron Huey, with his legs dangling over the immense Ruth Glacier Gorge in Alaska, highlights the impressive depth of the gorge, which can exceed 4,000 feet. The Amityville Horror House is known for its imposing structure and windows that seem to watch those who pass by. Located in Amityville, New York, it gained worldwide notoriety after the publication of the book The Amityville Horror, which describes supernatural events reported by the Lutz family, who briefly lived in the house in 1975. The residence became famous after the shocking murders of the DeFeo family in 1974, committed by Ronald DeFeo Jr., who killed 6 members of his own family. The house was sold at a reduced price due to the infamous reputation it had acquired. Members of the Manson family are gathered at Spahn Ranch, located on the outskirts of Los Angeles. This ranch, originally a Western movie set, served as the headquarters for Charles Manson and his followers during the latter half of the 1960s. The ranch's isolation allowed Manson to shape his theories and influence his followers with minimal external interference. Spahn Ranch gained notoriety after the brutal murders committed by the Manson family in August 1969, including the murder of actress Sharon Tate. This photo was taken just days before a tragic event. Charlie Lawson, the second man from the right, would commit an unimaginable act on Christmas 1929, killing almost everyone shown in the photo. The exception was his son, Arthur, positioned in the upper left corner, who was 16 at the time and was not present at the residence on the day of the crime. The motives for Charlie Lawson's actions remain uncertain, but the investigation revealed that he had meticulously planned the murder, evidenced by the fact that he had bought new clothes for the family for the photo session, which was unusual given his financial situation. In a disturbing image from World War I, a soldier in a state of shock is seen smiling with a haunting expression. The war, marked by trench warfare, was characterized by unimaginable conditions such as relentless bombardments, poison gas attacks, and the constant threat of death. Many soldiers exposed to these extreme stresses developed war neurosis or shell shock, a term of the time for what is now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The snaggle-toothed snake eel glides along the ocean floor, with its length reaching up to 3 feet. Feared for its intimidating appearance and prominent teeth used to capture prey, this animal is commonly seen in coral reefs. The snaggle-toothed snake eel is a fascinating and alarming sight for divers and biologists studying these regions. The image shows the coconut crab, the largest terrestrial invertebrate, climbing a trash can. With a leg span of up to 3 feet and weighing up to 9 pounds, this crab dominates the landscapes of its native islands. Its robust appearance and imposing size make it an impressive sight, both in its natural habitat and when exploring man-made environments. A sinister mask worn by Edward Paisnell during his attacks on the Isle of Jersey in the 1960s. Paisnell, known as the Beast of Jersey, terrorized the local community with a series of brutal crimes, including at least 13 confirmed cases of rape and sodomy. He not only committed heinous acts, but also carried out the crimes theatrically, often wearing the mask. Harvey Glatman took this photo of 19-year-old Judy Dull before dragging her to the Mojave Desert and strangling her. Glatman, one of the most notorious serial killers of the 1950s, lured young women with promises of modeling jobs. The photo sessions he offered quickly turned into nightmares. Glatman used these photos to fuel his twisted fantasies, maintaining a macabre record of his atrocities. He was captured and sentenced to death in the gas chamber for the murder of 3 women. H. Holmes's house, located on the outskirts of Chicago, Illinois, was known as the Murder Castle, and served as the site for a series of meticulously cruel murders committed by Holmes, whose real name was Herman Webster Mudgett. He built the house with multiple floors and numerous rooms that turned out to be deadly traps. The building included gas chambers, secret doors, and a maze of dead-end corridors designed to confuse and capture his victims. Holmes used his charming facade and persuasive skills to gain the trust of women before luring them into his lethal home.
The following photo had to be rendered in black and white, and we blurred what's on the plate because we're not sure if it's real or not, but it appears to be. Unfortunately, we can't show the full image due to YouTube's policies. In the photo, there are certain parts that seem to have been manipulated with Photoshop, but we can't be certain. It looks like there was a blackberry pie on the plate, and then the head of some animal was superimposed. However, even if it was Photoshopped, the animal's head seems real, which is why we decided to blur it. Without a doubt, it's a very strange photo that we couldn't draw a final conclusion on.